Hi, this is Joseph Williams, son of John Williams, and you are watching the Nerf Herder Council.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Nerf Herder Council. I am your host, JT. We are live on Facebook. Yeah, and you, what is going on with my computer? What is happening here? Hold on a second, guys. Let me try something here.
Okay, while he figures that out, let me handle this show intro. Welcome to the Nerf Herder Council. This is already off the rails, so we're just going to go with it anyway. I am AJ. Usually I'm brought on second, but since JT seems to be completely offline, in fact, he's calling me right now, we're going to filibuster until he figures out his internet. So tonight is actually a great episode. I've been so pumped to talk about this show since it started airing last week. We've all been waiting for it. It's so great that we finally have Andor as a series coming on now. So we're going to get into that in depth tonight. But, of course, you know, I don't usually do the intro, so let me get through all the usual stuff here. If you're watching for us on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button on this video so more eyeballs get on it. And make sure you hit that notify bell so every time we go live, you get notified. The schedule is usually every other Wednesday at 8:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Tonight is obviously a different night for us. It's a Thursday. Sometimes we got to shift our schedule around. Sometimes there's a night the week of Thanksgiving in the U.S. here. We're going to be going live on Tuesday instead of Wednesday because of a prior commitment. So always hit that notify bell to make sure that you are alerted when we're going live so you don't miss an episode and you get a chance to chime in the chat with some of our other super friends and stuff. So without further ado, let me bring on the main host, Mr. John Drake. How you doing?
Well, I think tonight is officially one of those nights where all of the crap that I've slung at you and Steve for all the, you know, being late and technical difficulties has finally come home to roost. So we are late because of me, first of all, everybody. I jumped up here late. I was trying to do some last-minute review on Andor, and I was a few minutes late. And I started the show 1 minute late and forgot to hit the go live button. So I had to dump out and then go live again. And as I went live, AJ, the reason I dropped out was my screen went to full white and was just flashing. I couldn't see anything. So my whole, oh God, what's wrong with my computer? What's wrong with my computer? Was me just hitting things and going, I have no choice but to shut down. So that was me shutting down and coming back up. So
You were at full power and you're going to have to shut down is what you're saying?
basically, I was the R2D2 of episode 7 of our show. Oh, this is what I
You're
get
the
though,
Falcon
man.
and then the tractor beam at the Death Star, actually.
I am. So I deserve all the shit you can sling at me. I definitely deserve it.
Oh, don't worry. Don't worry. You barely did worse than me because I plugged in and my monitor shut off, and then I plugged in again and my camera shut off, and then I realized that I didn't have my microphone plugged in, and then my phone tried to commandeer my earbuds. So we're doing great tonight. This is a fantastic show so far.
We're kicking ass. It's
Yeah.
this is the Nerf Herder Council in a nutshell, you know? Hey, look, Kale McLeish, who throws R2 under the bus like that? Seriously. R2, he was like worthless, basically, in episode 7. I mean, he saved the day yet again, as he does in every movie. But, I mean, come on, Kale, that's not wrong. Mimar, great to see you. She says, AJ's episode. Yeah, it almost came out like that.
Yeah.
So
It was almost like a WTF Friday.
I know. Oh, so I'm going to drop myself out for a second and let you kind of intro this. I'm going to make sure my stuff is working correctly so I don't have to do anything else. So
Okay.
give me like
I'll get
30
a few plugs
seconds
in.
here. So, yeah, go ahead.
All right. So, we usually do our plugs at the beginning of the show. We are brought to you by audible.com. You can go to audibletrial.com/NHC for your free trial and a free audiobook download, which you do get to keep regardless of whether you keep the service or not. So that's a great deal for you. Some great Star Wars books in there. So anything you want to check out. In fact, one of the ones that I've been getting through lately is called Shadow of the Sith. It's basically episode 6.5. It follows Luke Skywalker and Lando trying to track down Lando's missing daughter, and kind of explains where they were going. And it also has Ochia Bestoon in it, if you're a fan of that character. So it's a good read, and definitely worth it for no money whatsoever. So go ahead and sign up. I also have a fun announcement for tonight. In honor of the Andor series, we also have a new T-shirt to debut. So I'm going to bring that up here, which you can get, of course, on shop.nerfherdercouncil.com. So if you love Andor like we do, then you can get your very own Nerf Herder Council shirt inspired by the show. And this one won't be taken down for copyright strikes, since I now know how to get around that. So go ahead and order up your gear, rep the show, and now back to your regularly scheduled programming, I think. Except JT is just getting his green screen back set up. So I think we're good to go, yeah?
Yeah, we're good. I had to refresh the screen. I had all kinds of things to do. This is not going well for me tonight. This is going to be one of those shows. So, but it is what it is. So thank you for covering me. I appreciate it. So yeah, this is going to be interesting, man, because we're doing the first 4 episodes of Andor, and I've watched each of them once. So I haven't had a chance to go back and really watch a ton of times. But I kind of did that on purpose. I don't know where you stand on this. I wanted to have a very natural, visceral kind of first reaction kind of take on where I stand with the show for tonight's episode. I didn't want to, I nitpicked this, I nitpicked that. No, it's I just want to enjoy the show. And so I watched each episode once. I finished, episode 4 a few minutes before we jumped on tonight, and my computer all went to hell. Mm-hmm. So my first impressions of the show is that it's amazing. It's incredible. It's, what you're hoping for. You're like, okay, it's a Rogue One show. Give me more Rogue One. And it's definitely the feel, the vibe, just the aura of Rogue One. I mean, that was my immediate impression, is that it's more of what I love about the Rogue One film. Where do you stand? What is your, just right off the bat, just what is your opinion of the show, having seen each of the 4 episodes once?
I think we're exactly on the same page with this. One of the things that I like best about this is that it looks like Rogue One, like you were saying. As much as I love The Mandalorian and I love Kenobi, the volume has a look to it, right? And it's not the same as being on location like Rogue One. So I really enjoy knowing that, when you see something in the background, it's because they actually went there and filmed it.
Yeah.
And the whole thing just has this. It has that Rogue One look, but it also, I think, has that Episode 4 look as well. Especially when the corporate security force is talking before they do their strike mission, and the heavyset dude who's the total corporate man.
Yeah.
It's just lit in such a way. I'm that looks like the Imperial Round Table on the Death Star at the beginning of Episode 4. It's just great. So I've been enjoying it, but it took me a while to get used to the pacing of this. What did you think about that? It's a lot slower than any other story that we've gotten in Star Wars so far.
Yeah, I can see why there's going to be 24 episodes of this. I mean, isn't that the count that we were given at Celebration? I think
so.
Is it 24 or 22? It's 12 episodes and 10 or 12 and 12, something like that.
Yeah, the number keeps changing.
Yeah.
But it's a lot. It's a lot more than any other series that they've done for a season.
For sure. Yeah, I agree with you. The pacing is definitely different, but I think that's cool because, everything else kind of is more. I hate using this term, but we'll explain as we go. More Star Wars-y, it moves. It's action, action, action. Then you get some character building and some dialogue. It's driven. It's driven by the action. And this really is not. You've got that one major set piece at the end of the 3rd episode, in the abandoned factory. Mm-hmm. And other than that, it's really a lot of it's character driven. It's very one-on-one and more intimate. And like you said, the pacing is a lot slower. And Star Wars hasn't had anything with a slow pace. I don't think, outside of maybe to a point you've made several times on the show, like the first third of episode 4, maybe. Other than that, you're just going, and this show definitely does not do that. So I think that's a great point on your part. Kale says, I thought it was just 12. Kale, at Celebration, they told us that it is confirmed 2 seasons, and the episode total is going to be like 22 or 24 or something. So that's where we're getting our episode count from. Kale also says, anyone agree that episode 4 is the first proper good one? And then he said, evidently not. Yes, no, I do not agree with you there, Kale. I think that each of the episodes has had something really cool in it. And again, to AJ's point, the pacing makes it interesting in a way. The fact that it's slower and you're waiting for it and it's kind of building things. And I really like that. So, I mean, where do you stand on the pacing, AJ?
Yeah, like you said, Star Wars is usually the action drives the plot forward. I feel like in this case, it's a lot more of the characters driving the plot forward. They spend a lot of time talking before there's a lot of doing, but it's not like slow. It's just like, it's a different style of movie. It's like I was just watching No Country for Old Men last night, and as
so
great
good.
as that movie is, there's a lot of talking in that movie, and it's what builds up all the action when it finally hits. And I love that about this. We're getting to spend time with these characters that we never had a chance to do before. So I'm enjoying the variety, and I think as a result of that change of pace, I was thinking about it, and for the most part, the inciting incident, this fight that starts off the entire thing and makes Cassian have to go on the run, all that stuff that happens in these first couple episodes, it doesn't even have to be Star Wars. There's some droids and visual stuff that makes it Star Wars, but it's just a dude in the wrong place at the wrong time with an unfortunate incident happening, and then he's on the run. It has nothing to do with it's the Jedi, that could only be Star Wars, or the Force is in there, or the Empire is involved. No, it's just a local security force. It's a couple of bad cops harassing a dude, and it all goes south for everybody.
Yeah.
So I think that's really cool. I like the fact that this story can be told, apart from Star Wars. You don't have to know anything about Star Wars, and all the incidents are relatable. I think it's a great show, actually, so far, to show to someone who's maybe not necessarily a Star Wars fan, because it's so different from everything else they've done.
That is a really good point. Man, I didn't think of it that way. It is very unique. And so if someone's just looking at Star Wars as lightsabers and spaceships and all that kind of stuff, showing them Andor, you're right. It could be a potential gateway. And then obviously we know where the story ends. Because there's what they say, there's a time jump of 2 years between seasons or something like that. 3 years, 4 years, 4 years,
I think.
Okay, so the second season basically kind of runs right up into the events of of Rogue One.
Yeah, I think they said this season is basically year 1, which takes place 5 years before, and then season 2 is just that last year leading up to it.
Yeah. Okay, that's right. So yeah, I mean, so if you have somebody watch this show and they're into Andor, and then you say, okay, well, here's what happens afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
It's this movie Rogue One, and then they're like, oh, that's kind of cool. Okay, then you can say, okay, well, here's what happens immediately after Rogue One, and then you've got episode 4. And I think at that point, if you've watched 24 episodes of Andor and Rogue One and then episode 4, I think you probably got somebody hooked into, okay, let's continue watching this story type of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's a really good point. I did not even think about that, man.
Plus, you know how they Mon Mothma's always been a super important figure in the Rebel Alliance, but
Yeah.
I never felt like I really knew who she was. She shows up and she's said to be important because she's leading the meetings at Endor and all that sort of stuff, but she was just this faceless figure, and they give her a little bit in Rebels to flesh her out, but she was basically cut out of Revenge of the Sith. She's only in the deleted scenes. So I'm really looking forward to this whole thing, like this latest episode, for example, where they dive into her character a bit and show how, like, someone's got to be bankrolling this whole thing. Like, the Alliance is supposedly this like paramilitary organization where they actually have like ranks and stuff, but who's organizing this stuff? Who's paying for this stuff?
Yeah.
I love that. This latest episode, they're organizing a heist. They're just stealing an entire payroll from the Empire and using it for payroll, basically.
Yeah.
I love it.
So, quick question for you, because as I've said on the show before, I have not gotten through all of Clone Wars. Are they already tying things into Clone Wars stuff? I feel like okay, all right, because I feel like like Mon Mothma teased like in the shop, oh, she's gonna have to rely on somebody, and even my wife, Steph, she was like, is that gonna be Saw Gerrera? I'm like, I don't remember. Like I don't remember. I don't know the Clone Wars enough to remember how they worked together or if they did or. So
Saw never comes in the Clone Wars. Well, I mean, Saw is in there, but only like briefly, and he's very young. He's not doing anything yet. The Jedi come in an episode to train them because they can't officially interfere, so they train Saw Gerrera and his little band of rebels, or whatever you want to call it, to take on the legitimate government. But officially, the legitimate government is part of the Republic, so the Jedi can't get involved.
Okay.
If they got involved, they'd have to take the side of the government. So that's where that begins with Saw. But he's only like, I don't know, 12 or 13 in that show. It's in Rebels where he pops up, and he's in his like Rogue One-ish incarnation where he's a little bit crazy and doing all sorts of things that other rebels don't approve of.
Okay. I remember that. Because again I haven't gotten far enough into Clone Wars to. Boy,
He chokes
there's
the shit out of a Geonosian. That's cool.
Well, that's good. Is it Geonosian or Geonosian? Is it overarching or over? Well played. Yeah, is it overarching or overarching? Is it an overarching Geonosian or an overarching Geonosian? Oh, our
We're
pronunciation
overthinking
issues.
Italians right now, so let's get back on track.
Yeah, I know, right? Okay, yeah, no, I was just asking because, again, not being overly familiar with the Clone Wars yet, I was just wondering if there's tie-ins yet. Oh, it's our good buddy Sherrick. What's up, Sherrick? Good to see you, man. She says, "What's up, fellas? Andor is so awesome." Yeah, that's why we're here, dude. We're actually talking about the pacing of it, and man. So you got me all off track because I never even considered the fact that this could be like a gateway. I love that. I love that thought process there, man, that it's, someone who might not be a Star Wars fan could actually get into Star Wars because of this. And it does. I mean, it's a very raw show, and I love how, in Rogue One, the Rogue One squad was kind of beat up and dingy looking and everything. And now, Clem, Cassian Andor, the crew that he's a part of, they're even more dingy looking.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's really, again, they seem to always be able to just nail things where you could see, like, when you see the crew now, you could see the progression of how they look in Rogue One. And I love how they think those things out. Like, even to the point of, the ship that Stellan Skarsgård's character, say that 3 times fast.
Luthen Rail is the guy's name.
Okay.
I had to take notes to learn any of this stuff, so don't feel bad.
I hate to sound like I'm being offensive, but like that sounds like someone with a speech impediment. What's your name? Luthen Rail. So anyway, go ahead and cancel culture me. But yeah, even to the point where like Luthen Rail's ship, like the first thing I noticed was the cockpit looking like the Falcon, and it gave me that kind of, okay, this is a good guy, but maybe a little bit in the gray area, kind of like how Han Solo was in Episode 4. Like it gave you that vibe just off of one cockpit, So I love that, and so that was a cool aspect of it. This is such a hard show to describe for me because it is so different. And I'm watching it, And, Sherrick said, he's like, Andor's awesome. And all my Star Wars buddies, I'm sure all your Star Wars buddies are like, this show is great. But if you had to explain why, it's a little difficult to explain why. And, we're a member of a couple of gigantic, Facebook Star Wars groups. And, you're not on Facebook nearly as much as I am. But mine is always filled. Like when Mando episodes come out, it's just, it's like a roulette, just a spinning wheel of Mando's so great, new episode so amazing. Blah, 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 blah. So when Andor hit last week, I was expecting the same thing, and it was almost nothing. I got stuff the week before from D23 because a bunch of our celebration buddies were at D23, and apparently they got to see the 3 episodes. So, and they were, and I got some private messages on Facebook like, dude, you're not going to believe Andor. It's like, it's much more character driven. It's really dark, this, that, and the other. But then when it actually hit, Disney Plus, no one was really talking about it. And that made me wonder. I was like, okay, is this really good, or is it just, and now that I've seen it, it's probably just hard to describe.
My first impression when I was first watching these episodes after they dropped was after the first, I had to stop after the first 2 episodes and then pick up the third one later. And I was scratching my head going, almost nothing happened. Like the initial fight, the opening scene that sets everything off is pretty much it. And then it's like slow from that point on. I'm like, I can see why they actually changed it from, okay, we're just going to drop episode 1 in August and then go weekly to let's do 3 episodes right off the rip. Because if I only got the first episode and then the internet got a hold of it for commentary, this show would have been shat upon so hard.
Right.
Because there's just not enough stuff going on yet. And then the second episode comes along, and there's still not a lot of stuff going on. It's not until we get to the third episode where we see, like, the clip that they showed ahead of the Rogue One IMAX and, all that sort of stuff that was a sneak preview. That's all, like, episode 3 stuff. Because the first 2 episodes are a lot of setup, and all the action is in the third episode. Until that one hit, I was like, I don't know what to make of this at all. I think it was exactly the right move to just like drop 3 episodes, and that's at least like a satisfying introduction where now things are moving along. And like this 4th episode cuts off very strangely. You notice that? Like, it's like they just have like a predetermined runtime, even though they all vary, and they're just like, all right, that's the last scene we're going to give them this week. It's not like a conclusion. It's just like credits.
I thought the same thing. I was like, okay, that's not usually the cliffhanger we're used to.
Yeah.
Like, just, okay. All right, we're done with this episode. Okay. Our cousin Chris, good to see you, by the way, buddy. He says, it's the most cinematic in reference to, the vibe of Andor and why it's different. Yeah, I would agree with that. And also, AJ, I think to your point about, you mentioned earlier the volume, I think it, in terms of it being cinematic, they built an entire city block to film this on. It was an actual set that was like the length of an entire city block. So all that stuff in the downtown area is actually there. There is no volume. So, I mean, that plays a major role in that. So, yeah. I'm not sure where to go with this, man. Like, this show is like really confusing to me because it's so different, and it's I honestly think that's why it's so good, because you're watching this.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry about that. It's like you're watching it, waiting for those monstrous Star Wars moments, and you're not getting it. But
they're coming.
Yeah, exactly. And we got TIE fighters in the 4th episode. So you're like, oh, cool. And a couple times there was you could see some of the separatist ship shapes and stuff like that. I just wonder if it's, first of all, it is different from anything we've seen, but also I wonder if it's the fact that Rogue One is such a popular movie that using Cassian as the main character and knowing where he ends up in the Rogue One film, you're already willing to go along on this ride because what happens later. You want to see how he gets there. Like I think this would be a whole different viewing experience if this was just a new character. You know, like let's say this was Skeleton Crew, that show that's coming out next year in 2024, whatever it is, you know, where it's like four kids lost in the woods and then Jude Law finds them and, you know, hilarity ensues, whatever the hell, you know, we don't know what's going to happen. So if they were to pull this where there's like 2 action scenes in 4 episodes, you'd be like, what is this slow ass shit? But because it's Cassian and we love Rogue One so much, I wonder if like they I wonder if that went into the concept of the writing of the show. What do you think? Like banking on the popularity of Rogue One and Cassian Andor.
I think you raise a good point, actually, because you're right. I mean, it's on its own. If you don't know that action is coming and this guy is, you know, an action hero, for lack of a better term, would you be patient enough to, you know, wait it out? I mean, Cale McLeish has a good point here. He says if it had just been weekly from the get-go, I'd probably been out. And he does know that, you know, it pays off eventually. So, yeah. I think you do, to a degree, have to know that this character is more of an action-oriented guy and know that, you know, all this setup for his motivations and stuff that they're showing off in this series is all like prelude to the good stuff. Like, you know, once you get to Rogue One, then it's action, 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 action. But this obviously is not that. But I like that. I really like that we get time with. It's like the Clone Wars and Rebels and those sorts of shows where, you know, you take movie-based characters and there's just only so much time you get on screen with them in a feature film. But now let's give seasons of character development to them, and all of a sudden it all just enhances itself based on that. So, I mean, I think they're doing a great job with it. I love that you pointed out that they built all the sets and everything. I wonder if that was another one of the things is knowing the episode count. I feel like the budget on this had to be a lot bigger than Kenobi.
Boy, that's something we would have to look up.
I mean, Kenobi it was heralded as, oh my God, we got Hayden and Ewan back. So it's like episode 3.5. But
there goes your budget.
Produced, yeah, exactly. It was produced like The Mandalorian. It's a bunch of stuff in the volume. And I was really surprised by that because it doesn't feel as grand as you would expect to have that kind of a cast come back, and you know how much fans were clamoring for all of that. So for this show to go like the full Rogue One route of going on location and building sets for everything, I was really surprised. I expected it to be the same look and feel and overall budget of the other shows that they've done for Disney Plus, but this one seems like they just, you know, threw the bank vault at it instead.
Yeah.
I think it really like adds to the show, though. I think it's great.
Yeah, I think it definitely works. I wonder if it's solely based on the fact that like they needed that down in the mud type of feel that Rogue One had, and they didn't even want the slightest bit of digital anything because of, you know, the volume.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think that, you know, because of the lack of action scenes, at least so far, there's not a lot of need for the volume. It's a lot of close character dialogue, and have you noticed that? Like, there's not. They can pretty much like have a scene in a room, so you don't have to have this vast landscape of stuff. So maybe that was part of it.
Clever with their shots, though. A lot of the establishing shots that set up the environment, especially on Ferrix. I hope those are digital set extensions or something, because, like you said, to build something that size, like that is a major investment.
Yeah.
And if we don't end up going back to Ferrix for anything in the rest of the series, that's a huge chunk of change they dropped on like one set piece.
Maybe it's like paper mache. Like when we were kids, it's just chicken wire and paper mache. They just take a match to the whole thing when it's done, and the whole set's gone in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So Sherrick says, this is what Star Wars needed. Have shows and movies that bring out the kid in us, and some that we can relate to as adults also. Yeah, I think that, you know, not to, you know, self-gloss, but, you know, I think that kind of speaks to my point of, you know, we love Rogue One, so we're willing to sit, you know, which is basically a Star Wars action movie the way we always want it to be. And so we're willing to sit through the character development of a show a more adult-oriented program like Andor. So I think that's a good point. And our cousin brings up something that I was actually going to mention later, but as long as he's commenting, we'll talk about this now. He says, how will he meet K2? I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, I'm not even going to lie. I was what's the droid's name? B2 or something, or B something?
B2 emo. Yeah.
Yeah, B2. That's right. I should have remembered
nose.
emo. I should have remembered emo. Like, apparently he's into Fallout Boy. So yeah, B2 emo, he had that human type personality. I'm like, okay, is this going to be something where Cassian ends up taking his personality or programming or somehow and ends up putting it in this Imperial droid, and that's where we get K2, kind of like how the Falcon has God, I'm drawing a blank, L3
L337, yeah.
Yeah, L3's Navicomputer and all that stuff. I keep wondering that. So yeah, all right, there's Sherrick. He says it. I think something happens to B2 and Andor uploads his data into K2. Yes, I was thinking
I've
as
heard
soon
that
as
theory a lot. Yeah.
it does seem it's probably a little obvious
Their
to say
personalities
that.
don't really seem to be the same, unless, like they said, there's something weird about like the way they liberated K2 that causes personality quirks. He says anything
Right.
that comes into his mind. So maybe that's like another reason why B2 does not seem like K2. But the whole B2 to K2 thing, I think, is what people are catching on to.
It could be. Sherrick, John is literally stealing my idea, dick. Nice. All right, so AJ, you have to explain this one to me because, full disclosure, I'm 25% of the way into the second Harry Potter book. I just started Harry Potter. Kale McLeish says, shout out to Aunt Petunia from the Harry Potter series for being one of the cooler characters in episodes 2 and 3.
Yes. So the woman, I forget her name, starts with an M, but it's the woman who basically poses as Cassian's mom. She plays,
Oh, yeah.
She plays
Okay.
Harry's Aunt Petunia in the movies.
I have not gotten to an Aunt
And
Petunia
she
in
was
Harry
obnoxious
Potter
as
yet.
hell in
So
that, but she was supposed to be. So good acting.
okay. By the way, Kale, thanks for the spoiler in Harry Potter. I appreciate that. Speaking of dick, no. Just kidding, Kale.
Yeah. Spoiler for that 20-year-old book series.
How dare you, Kale? There's a statute of limitations. So, yeah, the whole K2 thing is interesting. I wonder how many people are just really just waiting and waiting and waiting. And now that we know it's 2 seasons for sure, are we even going to get K2 in the first season? Are we going to get through the whole season?
No.
Okay.
I think they said that he shows up in the second season. That one's going to be interesting, though, because they have told the story of K2 and Cassian meeting for the first time in comics.
In
I
comics,
didn't read it,
yeah.
though, so I don't know what timeline that fits in, and I don't know if they're going to honor it in this series or like dance around it. They might meet between seasons just to like step around that little chapter, and
Okay.
he's just like there in the next season for all I know.
Well,
I don't know.
he can't just be there. I mean, I get it that they explained it in the comics, but I mean, let's be honest. I don't think they've done anything to date that's been in the comics that shows up in live action where they're just like, they expect you to read the comics. It's, okay, we're going to explain it on screen. So,
Well, yeah, but they can explain it by like talking about when it happened instead of showing it. You know what I mean? Like he might just be there in episode 1 of season 2, and then they talk about like, you got that droid still? Like, yeah, he was just reprogrammed 3 weeks ago. Don't worry about it. You know, that kind of thing.
do you
I don't
think
know.
do you think they can get away with not explaining it though? Like, don't you think that's something that people want to see? Like, I feel like people want that. They need that payoff. I feel like that's like it's. I mean, let's be honest. What was the first question that everyone asked as soon as they said, "Okay, the next show is Andor"? You're like, "Hell yeah!" And what was the very next thing people said? Well, is K2 in it? I mean, people want more K2. I don't think you could just gloss over it.
I don't know. It could be a Han. It could be a solo movie kind of problem where they showed how Han met Chewie, and then people bitch like, you don't have to hand us everything,
It's so funny you said that. Our cousin just said, Cassian gets locked in a mud-filled cage to be killed by an Imperial droid. The droid is K2.
Hey,
Man,
Cassian said he was on Mimban. Maybe that's where it happens.
Yeah. We should have just had our cousin and Sherrick host this show.
Right.
I bet their computer would have worked properly. Hell, at least have them on in my place. Christ's sakes.
So here's a mystery that I'm wondering about, and I want to get your thoughts on this.
Okay.
Did you inspect the uniforms of the crew from the downed ship in the flashbacks? Did you see the logo on their shoulder?
Okay. I thought it kind of looked like a predecessor to the Imperial Science Officers on not Scarif. I'm trying to blank on
the Kaminoan symbol, huh?
No, I don't. No. God damn it. What is the planet where Galen Erso dies in the attack on the landing platform?
It's Edu.
Edu, thank you. Yeah, the science officers like on Edu. Like that looked like a straight version of that, and then the ones on Edu looked like it was tilted, at least to me. So apparently you're not thinking the same thing I am. So
yeah, no, you are wrong on that one. So I just want to show you what it actually is.
well, piss.
It's the Separatist logo.
What?
And this is why I'm confused, because they talk about the Republic. They don't talk about the Separatists. So I can't believe they'd make that big of a goof. So I feel like it's a mystery that they've yet to explain. I don't think it's a mistake. But that's weird, right? Like, so they said like when Aunt Petunia, because I don't remember her character's name, is raiding the ship in the flashback, and they talk about there's a Republic ship in orbit. I'm thinking like, okay, so makes sense. The Republic ship shoots down the Separatist ship, and that's how it ends up there. But then they later talk about this being a Republic ship, but there's all these Separatists on it. It can't be a mistake. That's way too blatant of a goof, you know. But I don't know how to explain it.
We got to figure out the exact timeline, because I know this show happens 5 years before Rogue One. And Cassian said in Rogue One, I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old. So that means when he got picked up by Aunt Petunia, which she will forever be known as Aunt Petunia on our show. Thanks, Kale.
Right.
I
think the Clone Wars were still going on. I think that's why you had Separatists involved.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, especially because it's only 15 years after the end of the war, and Cassian looks to be a hell of a lot more than 15 years old in this series. So,
I mean, is he 21? I mean, is that,
I don't know. I'm kind of age blind at this point. We can't tell anymore.
I completely agree.
Are you 21 or 37? I don't know.
Right.
Can't tell.
Yeah. No. Wow. Okay. I did not know that was the Separatist logo. I guess I when I saw it, I was thinking of the Imperial Science Officers on Edu. So that's what I thought it was like. Again, as I said earlier, like, where something ends up. So when you see a pre-version of it, in these shows, like you could see, oh, that morphed into this. And I thought that was, the precursor to the Imperial Science logo. So I was wondering if it was something like that, but apparently I was wrong. See, this is what's awesome about our show. I mean, not only do we educate people, but we come here to be educated. And usually it's me that's being educated because I'm a complete and total idiot.
Well, if I can completely derail the show for a second, I'll show you something else. Talk about being age blind. You want to know a real crazy factoid?
Okay.
Guess how old Wilford Brimley was when he shot Cocoon? Because you know how old he's supposed to be in that, right? Like 70s or 80s or something, right?
34.
You're close. 51. The dude was 51 in that.
I feel like he hit a certain age and then just never, like, physically aged anymore.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. The best part is, though, there's actually a Twitter account that follows it. Like,
what are you saying?
It just points out people that are older than Wilford Brimley was when Cocoon was shot. Just so you can compare, like, who aged better.
Look at this. It's
at Brimley Line if you want to check it out.
Yeah, okay, so at Brimley Line, and their description is, when Cocoon reached theaters on June 21st, 1985, Wilford Brimley was 18,530 days old. Here we make note of people who have reached that age. What the hell is that?
There's a Twitter account for everything, man.
See, and we
But
can't
it's
get
crazy,
follows
right?
or likes for shit. And yet this has 52.7 thousand followers. Ridiculous ass shit like that is getting all kinds of follows. We're giving quality content like 2 Girls and 1 Cup references and my computer blowing up on a weekly basis, and we can't get shit. Son of a... And why
isn't
did
it
I just
crazy,
mention
though?
that video? Oh, God damn
Yeah,
it.
I know. Now you did it. We're keeping it alive, man.
Oh.
But yeah, isn't it crazy that you got like Wilford Brimley, which does tie back to Star Wars thanks to Caravan of Courage.
Nice.
Yeah. Which actually, wait a minute. That came out in like 1985, didn't it?
It might have.
He was exactly that age. There you go.
So I can't believe we're talking Andor now. Now I'm going, did Cocoon come out the same year as Caravan of Courage? And by the way, Cocoon's a much better movie than Caravan of Courage, so, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, well that's not really a hot take. But just compare that, like, I think, like, isn't The Rock like 51 or something like that? Like,
Yeah.
Dwayne
yeah.
Johnson is the same age as Wilford Brimley was. That's crazy. He's playing Black Adam, and then you got Wilford Brimley playing, geriatric retiree.
Maybe they both eat oatmeal though, because Wilford Brimley was a big oatmeal guy, so they have that in common. So,
Right. Anyway, talking about age blindness.
yes,
I mean, I don't know if our cousin is actually right on this, or if he's just throwing out a number, but he said 43. Could be. I don't think so. There we go. There's the hot take. Christopher coming in
Purgles,
hot again.
2 Purgles, 1 Cup. Oh, I hate you guys. Oh, I hate it. Oh my
It's
God.
legendary. I think that might be another T-shirt.
Oh, that sucks.
Anyway, yeah. So
another-
when he was 6, when all this stuff started, I think the Clone Wars were still going on, and that's why the Separatist logo was on those guys' uniforms.
that would make
But
sense.
why they refer to them as Republic, I don't know. I feel like we're going to find out that answer.
Interesting. Yeah. I didn't even now when I go back and rewatch this, knowing that, I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, why did they say that?
Do you think we're going to get more flashbacks? Because there weren't any in the 4th episode.
I think you could. I mean, I almost think you have to, because I mean they established the fact that his quote unquote mother, kind of basically just took him off the ship. So that, but again, the whole statement of I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old, that leaves a lot to be explained. And when she, when she kind of like, I hate to use this word because it's not what happened, but abducts him, he's basically kind of like, again, I'm going to get cancel cultured for using this term, but he's basically kind of like a savage. He's just a dude in a loincloth in the jungle using nothing but primitive technology for anything, So,
No adults
but-
in that camp either. I wonder what the story is there.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, if he is around 6 years old at that time, and he looks like he's older, but let's just say for sake of, argument, he's 6 years old. If he's saying in Rogue One, I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old, well, he must have been raised by his quote-unquote mother, by Aunt Petunia, to believe in something other than the bad guys. So you would have to assume that that's where it starts. So I would think there would be more flashbacks to that, no?
Yeah. Yeah, and that raised another question. What was Aunt Petunia doing in that ship in the first place? Who was she working for, or why was she scavenging? All that kind of stuff. I mean, there really wasn't a rebellion going on during the Clone Wars. So, and as far as I know, Resistance didn't form until the very late stages of Episode 3, and it was just a bunch of senators saying, hey, wait a minute. Things might be going weird.
Yeah. So one other thing that I noticed, and this kind of speaks to the entirety of the new Star Wars universe since Disney took over. So this might sound like an obvious comment, but in this everything they've done, you've got these major actors, like people you've seen them in other things. You can be like, oh, that's the guy from such and such. That's the guy from such and such. And in this one, obviously, you've got Stellan Skarsgård, so you think, Marvel, Marvel Cinematic Universe, and any number of different things. And I started thinking as I was watching the episode tonight, episode 4, and I was thinking, like, I think it's almost necessary, and I really like how they use those actors, because I think it would be fine without name actors, like how George Lucas used to like to just use unknown people. You just wanted to discover somebody and have it be this completely fresh face, a fresh canvas. But I think there's a certain gravitas with an actor that is established. And I also think that the stories that they're telling really require somebody that knows what they're doing. It brings a certain legitimacy and realism to the Star Wars universe. And I guess I feel like this is an obvious comment, but I also feel like I should have noticed this earlier in other shows that they've done and other films. But it really is like, it kind of like, it grounds these things more. I mean, do you get that vibe off of it? Because to me, it feels a little more real when you get these realistic performances by people that are good actors. There's just something about having those people in there and those incredibly strong performances that really is setting this new era of Disney apart. And I think Andor is a perfect example of it, with, Diego Luna and, Stellan Skarsgård. And I mean, it just really makes a difference. I mean, have you noticed that, or is it just me kind of nitpicking a little bit?
Well, I didn't know anything of Diego Luna before Rogue One, so that was my first exposure to him. But I get what you mean. I think it's a double-edged sword, though. When you get something like Sam Jackson playing Mace Windu, it's just Sam Jackson. Like, the character doesn't even matter at that point, right? Like, it kind of takes you out of the universe because you're seeing, Sam Jackson. You're not seeing whatever character is. So I get where George was coming from, where he's like, I want nobodies because I don't want people to be focusing on who's playing the character. I want them to only see the character. But you're right, where when it's like our football team, for years and years and years, we toiled with middling talent, and we tried to like play them up as these great players, but it wasn't until we started getting like high name free agents onto the Browns we're like, oh crap, we are really a part of this league. Like, we're a premier franchise now.
Okay.
And it's a lot like that with Star Wars, where like when you start getting these big name actors in there, the same way Marvel over time has like Chris Hemsworth was nobody when he got cast in Thor, and then he blew up, and now he's a huge major guy. Chris Evans had a career, but he's obviously most famous for Captain America, that kind of stuff. And now you can't go a single Marvel movie without like some A-list actor showing up in a whatever the hell role, like Charlize Theron doing like a cameo at the very end of Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah.
I think it does. It definitely gives legitimacy to the storytelling. Like to attract that talent, it has to be good, because people aren't going to sign on for schlock.
Yeah.
And I think the stories are a lot better, and the characters are written a lot more, like you said, grounded than they used to be. Like, take Ewan McGregor's performance in Kenobi versus what he was given in Revenge of the Sith or any of the prequels.
Hey, we do not disparage Revenge of the Sith on this show.
Let me make my point. I'm not disparaging it.
Continue with your point and leave Revenge of the Sith out of this.
George's dialogue was very like broad strokes and like melodramatic, right?
Okay.
Whereas like Kenobi is a much more like gritty, grounded, like nuanced kind of performance.
Yeah.
And so it hits different. And I think that to get these like top tier actors like you're talking about, you got to give them something to like really chew on. And I think these newer stories and scripts are much more up their alley than like I said, the melodrama of the original trilogy and all the mainline Skywalker saga films. Actually, they got this tone it's just not nuanced like that. It's more action based, and it's more just like get the dialogue out the way so we can move on to the next space battle kind of a thing. That's the point of those movies. So yeah, I think for these shows, getting better talent in front of the camera like that actually helps it by far, because they've got a lot more acting to do than action to do.
Yeah, I think to your point, they always say that Star Wars is space fantasy. This newer stuff feels like space realism. It's like the space fantasy, but if it was real, and I think this show is like a perfect example of that. It's the very beginning seeds of the rebellion and stuff. Even this episode, they're talking about going after a garrison. And granted, they say, oh, it's 40, only 40 people, but they have 7, and so it's like this is like the first time we're seeing this tiny band go after a lot more, and obviously Cassian comes out on the right side of things, so we'll see where everybody else lands. But yeah, it feels like Star Wars if it was set in a real world, and I think that's awesome. It's like, because the coolest thing about these new shows, we've talked about this, is that they're taking the universe that we love and expanding it, but they're not taking such giant leaps. It's like we've seen this particular story. Now we're going to show you how we got there. It's like little offshoots. It just kind of like it broadens things a little bit at a time, which is really cool. And the realism adds so much to that, because that adds to the lore of Star Wars. Because you kind of see it from 100-foot view. Oh, there's a rebellion. There's the Empire. When we've seen the movies, but you haven't been down in the mud on Mimban. You haven't been, down in the sands of Tatooine, really down in there with Boba Fett. And I love how they get down. I'm not a fan of this term, but the nitty gritty. But they really get down at a very, very micro level and make it interesting. And I love how they're doing it. And again, I think maybe that's what's so cool about Andor, is that they are doing that in a way they've never done before. You kind of saw it in Rogue One, and I think with Rogue One, I think all of us, because let's be honest, if you're a Star Wars fan and you don't like Rogue One, you are in a very, 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 very small minority.
Mm-hmm.
And since we all love that movie so much, I think seeing something even more gritty and realistic that leads into that, I think that's why we like it. That's why we're sitting through this slow burn. They're giving us something we've never seen, but it's like, because, to my earlier point, maybe we're buying in because Rogue One was so good, but I think, because what they created in Rogue One was so good, doing even more of it is even better. That's what I'm getting out of it.
Do you think maybe the other reason why we're being more patient with this, because I remember as Kenobi was coming out, people were dissecting every episode and coming out with mixed reviews, really. There were the people that were just like, oh my God, it's Obi-Wan, it's Ewan McGregor, we love it because it's just, we're lucky to even have it. But then there were the other people that were just going I kind of expected more. If you're going to try to follow up Revenge of the Sith, I expected more than what we were getting from week to week. People were very critical of it. This one, like you said, there wasn't a lot of chatter, but there was nobody who was crapping on it. Everybody who had anything to say was. It's a measured response because it's not as a bombastic of a series. We don't have stormtroopers and Inquisitors and Jedi and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But the response is overwhelmingly positive and patient. I don't see anybody tuning out because it hasn't been, action oriented enough yet. There's not enough going on. They're just all right, I'll wait and see where this goes. And I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it's because it's it's less of a known quantity? When you see Obi-Wan, you want lightsaber battles and all this sort of stuff, and you're pissed if you don't get it. But this cast from Rogue One, especially with only having one Rogue One character and everybody else just being somebody in his periphery, I don't know. Do you think people are willing to give that more of a chance because they don't have any expectations built in?
I think that's a great point. Um, I think that's an excellent point, actually. I think that totally hits the nail on the head because you don't when you go in not having an expectation. We mentioned Revenge of the Sith a few minutes ago. You did it in a blasphemous fashion. Please don't do that again. But we did bring it up, and again, that's another movie that's pretty much widely accepted as a great Star Wars movie.
Mm-hmm.
The people that don't care for it didn't like how it paid off the story of how he becomes Darth Vader. And the reason that is because there was an expectation. They knew he was going to be Darth Vader, and if getting there didn't meet how they wanted it done, they're not a fan. The Last Jedi, we knew we were going to get a ton of Luke Skywalker, but because it wasn't superhero Luke Skywalker, people were pissed off. So I think you make an awesome point because we don't have a lot of experience with these characters. All we know is that Cassian is kind of still a scumbag in Rogue One because when he starts out, he kills that guy. He's like, "How am I going to get out of here? My leg," and just kills him. He's like, "Well, you're not. See you, dude." So, you just know that he's been a rebel since he was 6 years old, but you don't know much else. You're like, okay, I like Rogue One. Cassian basically played the Han Solo role in Rogue One, so let's see where we go. So yeah, I think that's a great point. I think without the weight of expectation, I think people are a little more open minded to it. And also, I mean, to your point, to add on to that, I think the other reason is like I think that the Disney Star Wars, at least the shows, have banked some goodwill. Like you can trust them. For as much as Boba Fett was a hit and miss for fans, tons of us loved it. I loved it. So I mean, if the Book of Boba Fett is the low point, I think you're doing pretty good because Mando was incredibly well received. Kenobi, incredibly well received. Bad Batch, great stuff. So when you get to a show like Andor, the fans are willing to give it a chance because you're like, okay, you've done right by me. It's kind of like,
it's funny you bring that up because I was actually just going to ask you if based on the positive reception that Rogue One received, maybe that's why audiences are being more patient with this and tempering their negativity.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's like your favorite band. If they put out 2 or 3 good records in a row, the next record that comes out, you're expecting it to be a great record, but if it's not quite as good, you're still like, okay, I'm cool with that. Like I'll give you a pass because the stuff's so good, So mm-hmm. I think you can make that analogy to it. I'm definitely like that. I'm hoping for like the best stuff ever, and so far for me, they have not slipped. So it's as soon as Andor hit, first of all, I knew I would like it because I'm a huge Rogue One fan, and I love the character of Cassian Andor. So I'm like, yeah, give me more. I mean, I'm incredibly narrow-minded. We've been over that in the show umpteen times, and I give me more Cassian Andor, man. Let's do it. So I was already going to like it, but Mando was incredible. I loved Book of Boba Fett. I have not gotten through the Clone Wars as we talked about earlier, but I love Bad Batch. I devoured Bad Batch. So basically anything they're doing, I trust it's going to be good. So when this started out really, really slow and nothing really happened, I was like, okay, this is cool because I like Rogue One. It's cool because it's different. But even though I was still like, okay, give me something. Like, can you show me a lightsaber? Like, or have somebody get his head chopped off or something? Like, so yeah, I mean, Cassian Andor shot somebody in the face in the first one, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But, I was fine waiting for it because I trust them to do right by me as the story goes. And that sounds very, I'm a fan, you owe me something to say that do right by me. But, that's kind of what we think, isn't it? Like, we want, like I said earlier, like, okay, we want the story of K2. Give me the goddamn story of K2. Don't just give me, okay, K2 shows up in the first episode of the second season, like he's all of a sudden there, like, what the hell is that? No, I want to know how you met K2. I want to hear K2 being a dick to you, you being a dick to him, and then you reprogramming him or something. You know, like I want to see that. So
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
Yeah.
Okay, so I did look something up while you were filibustering there.
okay.
Sorry, you were making great points. I'm glad you got that all out there because I didn't have anything to add to it. But I did confirm it's 24 total episodes and 12 per season.
Okay, so we were right. Okay.
So this season alone is double the length of Kenobi. And what does Mando usually get? 8?
8, I think. Yeah, 8 to 10.
Yeah. So we're gonna have in 2 seasons of Andor, we're gonna have the equivalent of all 3 of the seasons that will have come out of Mando by that time.
Yeah.
I think that's why they can, afford to. By the way, that also means that if you think that the pacing on this is slow, and this is just covering the 4 years up to season 2, God, 12 episodes all in that 5th year leading up to Rogue One. That's really going to slow to a crawl.
I don't know, man. I think that could actually move kind of quickly, because you're talking about if that covers a year, like if it's the 5th year. So let's say it's the year before the events of Rogue One. You're basically getting something happening once a month. So you could have like a major action piece every show. So it actually could be the exact opposite. So I mean, it could be. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that they would change it. But by the way, before we get out of here, which I'm not ready to yet, but our cousin is bringing up a point in the chat that I want to bring up before we leave. But so remind me to bring that up because I do want to talk about that for a quick second.
Yes.
So Kale McLeish says, just in case you want her real name, although I prefer calling her Aunt Petunia, he says, it's Marva. No, that's Aunt Petunia.
Yeah.
And you know what? I do feel stupid for not remembering that because I remember when they said Marva, I'm like, that sounds like Mama. So, but no, she's Aunt Petunia. She's officially Aunt Petunia.
Yeah.
Look, we've had Freds on this show. We've had all those goofy names that we give to. Now we have Aunt Petunia. We need to write these down and then write our own script to where it's like this amazing Star Wars script, but it's like Fred walks in and confronts Aunt.
Characters.
Yeah. Just have it be the actual characters. Like Fred walks through the airlock and confronts Aunt Petunia. Damn it, Fred! What are you doing? Don steps in and says, "Listen, Giuseppe." Like that'd be awesome. But
this is why I wish we had Joe on the show tonight because he could bust out that sound clip of you like, "What the fuck is this?"
The Dave Mustaine. What the fuck is this? So yeah, man. So I know we're up against an hour. So I mean, like I said, I want to get to what our cousin brought up. So final thoughts on Andor. I'll let you start. Andor so far, I should say.
Yeah, final thoughts on the first 4 episodes. I think it's got a great start. I'm loving all the character development they're giving, and the thing I enjoy most is that I honestly don't know what's going to happen. The only thing we know for sure is that he survives until Scarif. Outside of that, like him and Mon Mothma are the only 2 that are safe, and everybody else is up for grabs, and I love that. How about you?
For me, this has a very Revenge of the Sith feel. And I say that because we know where it ends. And the reason that I loved Revenge of the Sith is because we knew he was going to turn into Darth Vader. And I loved how they made it happen. I've said that many times. I don't have to, beat that to death. And I feel like so far, the way that he gets to, the way it's starting to show how he gets to be the Cassian Andor that we know from Rogue One, I'm loving how it's building up. I'm loving seeing the slow progression of, he's like, F you, and then all of a sudden he's taking money for, sorry, Kale. He says, Joe's soundboards are awesome. Yeah, Joe loves to like steal all my stuff and then use it against me. In his defense, I deserve it, so I can't really fault him. But yeah, I love that it's going in a direction that looks cool. It doesn't feel like, okay, well, he was just a scrum rat. Look at that solo term. a scrum rat, just some street dude, killed a couple cops, and then all of a sudden he decides he's going to be good. He's going to turn a new leaf. He's going to join the rebellion. No, it's, he still seems like, okay, what am I doing? Like, and I still feel like we're going to get, like, he's going to slip back and kind of try to quit, and they're going to suck him back in. Like, I love where it's going. And so I love the story of it. Little bonus Andor here real quick, just for a second, then we'll get to my dipshit, our cousin's comment. Am I the only one that felt like those cops, like the security detail, were like not intimidating at all? For some reason, I just got a Keystone Cops vibe off of them. Like, I never took them seriously. I was like, they're not a threat. These guys are they're just ridiculous. It was like the Three Stooges almost. Like, I that's the only thing I did not like.
Launched the operation to apprehend
any of it. The fat guy being like, everything is beautiful. Yes, like, I'm on board. Like, I'm like, shut up. Like,
isn't that kind of the point? Like, they're too crappy to be, like Kale says, why aren't they stormtroopers here?
Yeah.
Like, well, they're too crappy to be stormtroopers. They're basically like mall cops.
Yeah.
Or, park rangers. They're nobodies, but they're power tripping anyway. So I think that's the point.
Well, full disclosure, that whoever the head guy is, that nerdy dude, like the main guy that like goes against orders to go like try and track down Cassian or whatever.
The Zealot, yeah, whatever his name is.
Yeah, well, there's another one. We don't know his name. We're going to call him the Zealot. We've got Aunt Petunia and the Zealot in Andor so far. As soon as that guy started talking, I was like, I'll bet you AJ loves this guy. I got Hux vibes off of that dude so much. I was like, AJ's going to love this dude.
You know what I get off of him? Who was the operator? Who was the operator in Aliens? Who's like watching everyone get picked off one by one when they go in the alien hive?
Oh, the main guy.
Pants, like,
yeah.
Like, I didn't authorize that. I didn't authorize that. Who's firing? Like,
yeah.
He was all bluster, and then when stuff started going to shit, he's like,
I'm gonna paraphrase, Kale. I'm gonna clean up your comment because I can't. It's Paul Blart, Star Wars cops. Kale, that is fantastic. Oh my God, that's awesome. That's exactly what it is. I was like, who are these assholes? Like, what is
like,
that?
Don't you love it? Like, it's just Luthen and Cassian, and there's enough chaos going on that like this entire security force, the fat dude, like you were saying, is like, we're under siege, we're surrounded. Like, wait, it's 14-on-2, and you're surrounded.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So, real quick question, and then we'll get to our cousin's comment here. Is the Zealot going to become a member of the rebellion? I say yes.
Ooh, interesting. He does have a little bit of that Agent Callus vibe, doesn't he?
That's exactly who I was thinking of. Okay, I was wondering if you... Yeah. I'm saying yes. What do you think?
Okay. No, the voice doesn't match. I was going to say my counter theory to be, super tinfoil hat would be that actually is Callus. But
wow,
he's not the right accent. Unless they completely like just give the guy the name and no likeness whatsoever. I'm going to assume that's not going to be Agent Callus, but wouldn't that be great if it was, right?
Well, honestly, if you put like sideburns on the guy, like the mutton chops or whatever, it could be.
He's got an American accent. So unless he learns like that British accent or whatever Callus has, then not the same dude.
Okay. All right.
I have to actually look up who the hell that guy is now. It's pissing me off.
By the way, you have a message in the private chat. All right. So let's bring up our cousin's comment before we get out of here. So he says, James Earl Jones retiring from Darth Vader, and the news today that Bruce Willis sold his deepfake likeness opens the door for Bruce showing up in Star Wars. That would be awesome. And then Kale says, depends on how well the Willis AI comes out, I guess. That I don't worry about, Kale, because before I knew what deepfakes were, I saw the Jim Carrey deepfake of him in The Shining, and I was like, oh my God. I thought it was Jim Carrey acting out that scene, and he just like CG'd his body into the scene. I didn't know what a deepfake was at the time because I don't pay attention to stuff because I'm a complete idiot. But the deepfakes I have seen, I think they would absolutely nail it. And man, I'm telling you, I think it would be awesome to have Bruce Willis in Star Wars. I mean, he's definitely his vibe could fit somewhere, wouldn't you think?
Kind of. So the deepfake will give you the likeness, but unless Bruce Willis is also lending his voice to it, it's nothing. It's just a CG character that happens to look like a real person then.
Ugh.
Like, that's getting back to the Darth Vader thing with
Yeah.
James Earl Jones signing over his likeness, like not likeness, but his voice. Okay, well, that makes sense. I do love that, by the way, that it's life imitating art at that point, right? Like Darth Vader's voice, once he goes into the suit, is synthesized.
Yeah.
So now they're using a synthesized voice to create Darth Vader's voice.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. But
Yep.
if you have a guy that looks like Bruce Willis in Star Wars and he's not voiced by Bruce Willis or doesn't sound like Bruce Willis, you're like, well, why did you make the character look like Bruce Willis then? Like, why would you use deep fake Bruce Willis and not actually have Bruce Willis involved? There's no point.
Yeah. Man, yeah. I will say, though, good on him. I mean, unfortunately, the poor guy can't act anymore because of his condition, but he made a ton of money letting people just use him. It's pretty smart. So, personally, I think it would be awesome.
I'll take Die Hard in space. Sure.
Yeah. Who wouldn't?
He'd make a great rebel.
Yippee-ki-yay, scrum rat. So one last thing, and I need to tread very, very lightly on this one. Kale says, thoughts on AK-47s in Star Wars. Like, they're not even disguised like the Sterlings and Mausers at the OT. It's literally just an AK. All right. So, AJ, if I cross the line into this sounding offensive, correct me immediately and cut me off because I don't mean any of this to be offensive, okay?
Okay.
This is how terrified I am of cancel culture, man. Like, when I saw Cassian and what's Jan or no
Bricks.
The chick he's walking through the mountains with to get back to the camp.
Oh yeah, sorry, I've only seen that episode like an hour ago.
I'm trying to blank.
Rewatch.
But
Yeah.
as they're walking up and then seeing how the crew was dressed and seeing the AK-47s, they looked to me like videos we've seen of the Taliban. So so please, if anybody thinks I'm trying to be racist in any way, I'm not. It just, the way they were dressed and the weapons they were using looked like that. And then I thought, well, that kind of makes sense because at this time, the rebels are kind of like the rogue, they are like, they're the smaller, more ragtag, hard scrabble band of outsiders, fighting for a cause that they believe in more than the other side.
They always
So,
are.
I mean,
that never
so
changes.
Does that make sense? Like I said, I didn't want it to come out sounding like I'm like dissing the Taliban or something like that. But not that I'm supporting the Taliban. I'm making it worse by talking. Jesus Christ.
No, if you look at the entire conflict from the side of the Empire, they're terrorists. The rebels are terrorists. They're not a legitimate organization. They use guerrilla tactics. They're attacking a legitimate government. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So it makes sense.
It was
Okay.
presented from the. I mean, George Lucas even said that on that AMC Movie Maker series or whatever that James Cameron did.
Yeah.
He said the rebels were modeled after the Viet Cong.
Okay. All right. So all right. Yeah.
So
like I say,
it's probably intentional if you're getting that vibe. I think it's on purpose.
Well,
more of that gritty, grounded sort of feel.
I'm never sure what's going to be considered offensive anymore. So I didn't like, but I got that vibe immediately, and it made total sense. I mean, even down to like the types of cloth that were used looked like Middle Eastern type cloths, in a more like desert climate and stuff like that. So yeah, so Kale, that's my thoughts on the AK-47s. I really got kind of like a Taliban kind of, kind of vibe off of that, which would fit considering what the rebels were considered at this time. So
yeah, and I like that they're pointing out that there are like different facets of the rebellion too, where there are the gritty ass ground troops like Cassian and those people that get their hands dirty and do all that stuff, and then there's the political side like Mon Mothma and Luthen Rael that are putting on the clean political front, like everyone's got their role to play, and yeah, their role is to be the gritty fighters that are basically not indiscriminately killing people, but they're doing the dirty work.
Yeah.
So
all
if
right.
you're getting that vibe off them from real world examples, I think that's intentional.
Okay. Well, all right, good. Like I say, I just told Kale in the chat, like, dude, I'm never sure what's offensive anymore. Like, I don't want to piss anybody off because that was not my intention, but that's the vibe I got. So, gotta speak honestly. So, yeah. Well, dude, again, I am so sorry for my computer screw ups. Again, this was all of my demons coming home to roost. All of my shit talking for for the years. Like, I deserve it. So I
gloves on the other foot now, Kramer.
That's what we should do. Let's have an airplane episode.
There we go.
Let's just anybody who doesn't like airplane has no sense of humor. Let's just be honest there. Yeah, dude, this is fun, man. I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see where Andor goes. I'm loving how it started. I love the slow pacing because there's going to be some great moments in it, and I think it's going to make the great moments even bigger. Those Star Wars-y battle moments are going to be even bigger because you're waiting for them. It's like that. The anticipation is building. It's kind of like how wrestling used to be when we were kids. When the only pay-per-view was like WrestleMania, and you knew the main event like 7-8 months in advance. You had to wait all that time to get to Hogan and Andre and Hogan and the Warrior. It was cool, man, and waiting for it makes the even if it wasn't a great match, it made it feel like a great match because you had that anticipation. So I love that they're doing that. So another great episode, dude.
You know how we did this on a Thursday because you weren't available last night?
Yeah.
Okay, I think if I've done my math correctly, I think the season finale of Andor is going to be the night that we have to shift to Tuesday that week. I think it ends right before Thanksgiving, doesn't it? Because there's 8 more weeks
it might.
of this.
Let's see.
So we're going to be one day ahead of the season finale.
Oh, are you serious?
I think so. That is not cool.
All right, so what we're going to do is on that Tuesday, we're going to do a watch along at midnight.
I'm not opposed to that.
If I could get off of work that Wednesday, I actually would, believe me.
Do it anyway.
Do it. Do it. Yeah, I mean, to your point, though, like talking about months in advance, dude, we got some cool stuff coming up. We've planned out pretty much all of our episodes for a while. And by the way, to all you guys that tuned in tonight on a Thursday, thank you for being cool about, it not being on our normal night. I was the one that screwed up doing it last night. I actually had tickets to go see the Ronnie James Dio documentary in theaters, and I'm a huge music nerd and total non sequitur. But if you're into music at all or heavy metal or even just like documentaries, the Ronnie James Dio documentary was one of the best I've ever seen. And I'm not a big Dio or Black Sabbath fan. I have I have huge respect for Ronnie James Dio's voice. And I know I have several music buddies who've met him who said he's the sweetest guy ever. So I have respect for him as a person and a vocalist. But the music just is, the Wizards and Dragons thing isn't really my cup of tea. But I'll listen to it if it comes on. That documentary was phenomenal. I would highly recommend it to anybody. It's actually in theaters on Sunday this weekend at 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So if you look up the website, the movie's called Dio, Dreamers Never Die. It'll give you your local theaters and showtimes. So you can see it in theaters on Sunday. It's awesome. So, man, I forgot to bring that up at the beginning of the show too, AJ. I screwed up our show night. I screwed up my... I'm just a total fuck up on this episode.
No, you're doing great. Keep
Oh
going.
my,
It's
oh my Lord.
fantastic.
The Germans, forget it. He's rolling. So yeah, we got some awesome stuff coming up. Man, let's see what are we doing here, AJ? We've got actually
So
coming up.
12th.
Yeah, October is going to be our Halloween episodes, and October 12th we are doing Hellraiser versus Hellraiser. I'm really excited for this one. The Hellraiser remake is coming out on Hulu next Friday on October 7th, and from everything I've read, it sounds like a giant piece of shit, and I love the original, so I can't wait to watch the new one. So October 12th is Hellraiser versus Hellraiser. And on October 26th, we are going to be doing a show titled In Defense of the Rob Zombie Halloween films. And we have a special guest coming on. If we can get our audio and video set up, my wonderful stepdaughter Drew will be jumping on because she is a monstrous Halloween freak. She loves scary movies. So she's going to be jumping on because she's a huge fan of those movies, as am I. Where do you stand on the Rob Zombie Halloween films?
Love them. Better than the originals.
Oh. Boy, is that a... Boy, you better bring
I'm
something
sorry,
to the table.
If I could just make one final point. So Halloween Ends is coming out, right?
Mm-hmm.
At this point, with the age of Jamie Lee Curtis and Laurie Strode, her character as a result, isn't it just fucking cruel at this point? Like, you know, when a psycho killer is chasing down a 17 or 18-year-old girl, it's like typical horror movie stuff. But now he's just harassing a geriatric. I mean, come on. I don't want to see like a 58 to 65-year-old woman getting harassed by this guy anymore. Like, God damn it, give it a rest already.
So it's like
Enough.
So is Halloween Ends just her in the old folks' home, and the way that he finally beats Laurie Strode is just kind of like changes her pills out and she overdoses on like, you know,
Right?
like some kind of old person medication.
It's like that old Simpsons gag. Star Trek 12. So very tired. Like, come on. Like, could it
See,
be like, I don't know, Laurie's kid or something instead at least? So it's some like vital, like youngish adult instead of, you know, like I said, a 60-plus-year-old woman getting harassed by this guy. It's like the 7th time that they've crossed paths with each other. Come on now.
I just want her to kill Michael Myers in the first 5 minutes, and the rest of the hour and a half is her like chopping him into little bits, like setting him on fire, you know, then pissing on the bits, like putting the fire out with her piss, then like sauteing the guts and like feeding it to animals, you know, and like, you know, the animal poops it out and then she throws the poop in acid, like just like an hour and a half of that. And then at the very end, you see like poop sliding across the ground and ashes sliding across the ground. And then it makes a finger and it twitches and you do 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 do. Like,
Oh, Sherrick, you're gonna trigger him. Stop now.
oh
Now.
no, Sherrick, I don't want to hear it. Sherrick says the new Hellraiser is getting awesome reviews. Stoked for it. No.
New things are allowed to be good too, John.
No. You know who's liking the new Hellraiser is probably like a bunch of like freaking 20-year-olds like that are stuck in a social media world and nothing else. Because it totally changes the story of the first one. It's basically some weak-ass pussy who finds LeMarchand's, the lament configuration, LeMarchand's box, and then Hellraiser comes out and it's this whole different thing. And dude, okay.
We got a whole episode coming up about it. You can put that back in the bottle for now.
Look. Pinhead is a man. The other side, the main's his right-hand man is technically a right-hand woman, but the new one, Pinhead, is a woman. If I read right, that's not the story. I hate when they have to change this shit so fucking much. Like, just stop it already. Some things can just be what they are.
Sherrick, why did you start this?
God damn it. First of all, the movie didn't even need to be remade. Okay? And there we go. I'm pissed off that Hellraiser got remade, yet we're doing a whole episode about why the Rob Zombie Halloween movies are great. I'm I'm a study in contradiction, I suppose.
Contradiction. Yeah.
Yeah, look,
Let's get the hell out of here, shall we?
Yes, we shall. So, October 12th, we've got Hellraiser versus Hellraiser. Sherrick, you're a huge prick, and you're going to be wrong. October 26th, we are doing In Defense of the Rob Zombie Halloween movies. November 9th, we have a very special guest coming on the show. You know him, you love him, the host of Mocktails from the Cantina. We are doing a show called Why Rogue One Rules. We're into Andor. Rogue One is Chris Mock's favorite movie. He's been tweeting and Facebooking about it like crazy. I'm like, you know what? I watched it again a couple weeks ago, and I was like, we gotta get Mocked on it since Andor's so good. Let's just have a love fest for Rogue One. So we're gonna do that, and then we're gonna figure something out for the night before Thanksgiving, and off we go. But we also have a very cool thing coming up. A movie I don't think we've even mentioned this movie in the 6-7 year history of the show, AJ. December 21st, we are going to be doing our review of Avatar, The Way of Water, and digging deep into Avatar, which Avatar is a movie I absolutely freaking love. So we've got some really great stuff coming up. So, man, AJ, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for dealing with my computer episodes, issues, fuck ups, whatever you want to call them at the beginning of the show. Thank you. Again, I will eat all the shit you have to give because I've given you crap over the years for multiple things. So thank you for dealing with it, man. Thanks to all you guys in the chat and all the viewers and everything for putting up with it. Oh,
you're
man.
One of the Purgles is what you're saying in this 2 Purgles, 1 cup scenario.
Oh, looks like I'm doing this outro on my own. I just dumped AJ out of the show. Some things I will not tolerate. All right, he's back. Anyway, man, thanks a lot for dealing with it. I'm really sorry for all the screw ups and whatnot. But yeah, guys, thanks a lot for tuning into the show. Kale's Jesus, Kale, it's great to see you again. Sherrick, great to see you, man. Discuss Metal Joe. Yes, you are very, very late. Cousin Chris, thanks for hanging out. Mimar, good to see you again. And guys, we are going to be back on our usual night on Wednesday. In 2 weeks, the date will be October 12th, and it is Hellraiser versus Hellraiser, the first of our 2 Halloween episodes. So until then, don't forget, we are brought to you by Audible. Go to audibletrial.com/NHC for your 30-day trial and a free audiobook download. Get your customizable Nerf Herder Council swag at shop.nerfherdercouncil.com. If you're watching on YouTube, click that like button and that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so that you're notified every time we go live. AJ, did I get it right? I paid attention even when I was rebooting my computer. Nice. All right, so guys, we love you, man. Thanks for tuning in. We have a blast doing the show, and you guys are such a massive part of that. So until next time, I am your host, JT, at Dog Pound Jedi. He is AJ.
At Drake Adams 579.
And we will see you next time.